Right, welcome back to another show, and we are under new name. Thanks to all of you who voted on our Twitter poll last night. We kind of thought we would change our name to differ from Callum's YouTube ventures, so we've gone with Red Tinted Glasses to touch on, our bias towards Aberdeen. Shout out to our natural looks with the four eyes, and what better way to start off a new show with glasses than getting our fellow Specky podcaster Grant Campbell on the show. Grant, welcome.
Thanks, Glenn. Thanks for your terrific introduction. It's nice to be a part of the show.
Callum, happy with the name change?
I'm delighted. It sort of warmed to me, and it's quite funny. And if we've got to take the mick out of ourselves, because then no one else can get to us. It's fine.
Yeah, people like doing it on the internet anyway, so we'll just take it ourselves.
I do all the time with my podcast, so yeah.
Yes, Grant, of course, of Campbell's Footballs. Many of you might be familiar with his work as well, and he will touch on his own work towards the end of the show. This week, we want to look back at the international break. I know not many of you will want to hear about, but we can't not ignore a successful international break for once for the national team. And we also look back to a return of club action with the Dons taking a trip down south to Tannadice. So let's start on the international front. A successful week for Scotland, 3 wins, 3 clean sheets. Callum, as a fellow Tartan Army member, happy?
Absolutely delighted. 3 very solid results, 3 clean sheets. I don't honestly remember a time in my lifetime where we kept 3 clean sheets in a row. Very, very happy. Obviously not the most entertaining football, but if it gets results, I'm not bothered at all.
Yeah, it's a funny thing you said. I actually asked that question of at Tartan Scarf on Twitter, a good account to follow for all you Scotland fans. It was 2017 was the last time we kept 3 consecutive competitive clean sheets. Grant, I saw you ran a poll on kind of the national managers who's had a successful kind of recent campaign. Steve Clarke was a kind of runaway leader. What's been your thoughts on that break?
Well, thanks, Glenn. I think it's been a really interesting story, hasn't it? I think it really stemmed from that penalty shootout success against Israel. I think all the momentum was really built off that game in particular. It wasn't a classic game. In fact, it was a pretty terrible match, wasn't it? It was just littered with nerves and not a lot of chances. A couple of big chances in the first half for McTominay, especially the header. But the penalty shootout, I mean, it really was settled in that 2 penalty kicks, wasn't it? John McGinn squeezing his past off here, Marciano, and then Zahavi stepping up and seeing his saved superbly, got to say, by David Marshall. And then I think getting that confidence win, guys, over a team like Israel to get the opportunity to play that playoff against Serbia next month gave the guys and Steve Clarke and the nation a massive confidence booster. And then you head into the Nations League games, which are just as important, I would argue. And then you follow it up with a decent win against Slovakia, a better performance, a more confidence-boosting performance. And then last night, they played particularly well against the Czech Republic. Yes, they rode their luck at times, but you need to get the breaks if you're going to challenge and keep progressing. And it's been a pretty successful week, you've got to say. I mean, 3 clean sheets. It looks like we're getting the spine of the team correct. It's fantastic. Beyond certainly my wildest dreams, anyway.
Yeah, and I think a prediction of about 76% likelihood in gaining promotion to League A in the Nations League for next season, which could, attract glamour ties to Hampden. Look at these nations that are there. Belgium, obviously, we've played recently in qualifying. Germany, France, Holland, all these big countries back at Hampden. These aren't glorified friendlies anymore. There is a competitive edge to them, and it's great to see fans getting behind that format and also a successful Scotland team. And I think one thing that stood out to me last night, and you'll probably like this, Callum, being a Newcastle fan, was obviously Ryan Fraser's performance. But his quote saying that they're now fighting for each other, not fighting their own battles. There's a real team spirit. And I know, obviously, the 12th man, we've got our own WhatsApp chat. The Scotland fans amongst us in that chat were saying, there's a real determination now in the squad. And the Killie fans, Adam Lyon, he touched on that Clarke's now building a national side based on his Kilmarnock side. Do you kind of see those similarities?
Yeah, well, we're definitely difficult to beat, and that was obviously basically the main reason Kilmarnock did so well under him. They became very difficult to beat and good on the break as well. And it's funny you mentioned they're playing for each other and it's sort of all together and not just individuals. Even me watching it, I was watching that going, desperate for Ollie McBurney to get a goal. Obviously, people have had a lot to say about Ollie McBurney, given what he said as well in the past about playing for Scotland and his the club he supports as well. And even Ryan Jack, my dad was absolutely thrilled with Ryan Jack last night, and it's not something I ever thought I would say ever again, to be honest.
Yeah. I think though when the nation can get behind a Scotland team like we've managed to do over this last week, you do feel a sense of excitement ahead of next month, don't you, Grant?
I think Tom English really quoted it really well on the BBC Sport website and in Sportsline last night. There's this togetherness and momentum and resilience building about Scotland. Mm-hmm. And I think that's absolutely three key words I took from his analysis. But also Ryan Fraser really mentioned it so well in his post-match interview, John McGinn as well. There really is a momentum growing. And let's be honest, going into the Serbia game, we are probably the underdogs. But I'm more optimistic than I was 7 days ago heading into that game right now.
Grant, don't build my hopes up too much. I'll be donning my kilt and face paint, shouting freedom before long. It's just
you won't be the
only one. I don't know what I'll be like come November. But in a rare change, obviously we've had Scott McKenna in the past playing. Obviously we didn't this month. We've seen a few Aberdeen players named in the squad. Considine getting a deserved call up at long last. Some finally recognition for the great man. Ross McCrory getting a call up from the 21s after captaining them to victory over the Czech Republic, scoring as well, as you mentioned, Grant, before we started recording this episode. Conor McLennan, another Don in action and scoring as well. Bruce Anderson getting a call up. There's lots to be positive from an Aberdeen perspective, then them gaining national recognition, don't you think?
Definitely. I think Andy Considine, I think when he made his debut, every Aberdeen fan, it was like they were making the debut. They were so happy, so proud of him to finally get that recognition. And even after he played the first game, when he started the second game, people were saying, like even the replies, they were still saying, "Oh, I can't believe Andy Considine's playing." But not only were Aberdeen fans jumping in going, "What are you on about? He was brilliant." But I saw Celtic fans, Hibs fans, well, maybe not Hibs fans, they were a bit unhappy about it.
They were not happy.
Sort of jumping in and saying, "What are you on about? He was brilliant." And he was. And I'm just so happy for him. But as you say, great international break really as an Aberdeen fan, not only being a Scotland fan as well, but for club level it was as well. It's just a shame Ross McCrory didn't get a cap as well, but absolutely delighted with it all. And Andy Considine, funny that it comes after the week after we criticised him a little bit, just a little bit.
Yeah.
But,
and the maybe only negative from the international break from an Aberdeen point of view is there was talk of Lewis Ferguson picking up a small knock, and maybe you've said, Calm, in discussion with myself, that it was maybe, just given the opposition they were playing in midweek, he was just rested as a precaution. Obviously, we will come on to the Aberdeen game shortly, but Grant, you must see signs of encouragement from an Aberdeen point of view, seeing these players not only in action, but having a positive impact on the national side, scoring and having solid games, keeping clean sheets like Considine's done. He really did silence his critics, I think, those of out with an Aberdeen camp.
100%. I think just in general, there is so much reason to be cheerful with Aberdeen at the moment and its connections with the Scotland squad. I didn't think Considine put a foot wrong in the two games he played. He looked very solid alongside Declan Gallagher and Scott McTominay and that sort of back three / back five, whatever you want to call it. I thought he didn't look out of place. I thought it was a very astute performance. Of course he's going to be nervous. I mean, he's a little bit older than some of the other guys in the team, but he's had the knocks. He's had some difficult times. I was really pleased for him, and I think he's the oldest player to get a cap since another Aberdeen player. I think back in the 1960s, I think it was. Richard Gordon did mention that on Sports Side, the name escapes me at the moment, but really, really good, solid two performances from Considine. Will he start the Serbia game? It's going to be interesting. He certainly put himself in the equation. I'd like to think that Steve Clarke will definitely consider all his options of heading into that big match next month.
Yeah, and myself and Callum will have a special podcast ahead of that Serbia game next month. We're hoping to have a couple of guests on to help us preview that from a Tartan Army perspective. We've got Fraser Wallace lined up, but hopefully maybe get one other John Bleasdale. Hopefully, if you're listening, you might be interested. A prominent Tartan Army podcaster. Be good to get yourself on to add valuable input. But obviously, we've got confidence from the Scotland results. Players involved, gaining confidence, gaining momentum. Do both of you feel that these players being involved at the national level, obviously McGinn involved in Northern Ireland and scoring as well. I know he's not been involved as much at club level, but they've gone away, got goals, clean sheets, confidence, momentum. Do you think that's going to benefit Aberdeen in the next few weeks up and coming?
I definitely think so. The experience, especially for Considine now having played at that level, and not only that, knowing he's capable of it as well, the confidence has got to be sky high. Coming through with 2 clean sheets, even better. And obviously Niall McGinn, he's been in the Northern Ireland squad for, years, basically since he's been at Aberdeen. But to show he can still get a goal at that level as well, it's got to be a big boost to have these guys in amongst the Aberdeen squad. Obviously McGinn doesn't even start every week, he's not a guaranteed starter. It's massive confidence. And Bruce Anderson, obviously he's not with us right now, but out on loan as well. In fact, he's getting in the 21s. It's all positive stuff.
Grant, do you think this is gonna help us? And we've got big games coming up.
I've got to agree with Callum's points. I think Considine's performances will indirectly help that back three. Obviously, with McKenna leaving to go to Forest, there's a bit of uncertainty, I feel, at the back at times. I think his confidence, having had 2 very solid performances at Scotland level, should help at club level, you would like to think. I think for the under-21s, Ross McCrory is just going from strength to strength, isn't he? He's just having an absolutely superb time of things at the moment. Lewis Ferguson has obviously stepped his game up this season. And for Conor McLennan as well, to get a bit of confidence as well. He seems to be really enjoying life at Scotland level. I think that can only be useful. But you mentioned Niall McGinn, Callum, and I think the performance of Niall McGinn consistently for Northern Ireland is absolutely sensational. And let's not forget, they have a big opportunity themselves against Slovakia to make the European Championships. And I see no reason why they cannot give Slovakia a really good game. I think it could be a very much 50-50 game there at Windsor Park. Hopefully with some fans. We'll just have to wait and see. But McGinn's performance in that game in Bosnia was superb.
So we'll leave the Scotland side of things there with Considine and Clark leading us to the Euros, hopefully, and we'll come back to that next month. But it's back to club action. Aberdeen are finally back after a long week's break. Well, for some it'll feel even longer, I'm sure. We take the trip to Tannadice for the first, some will call it new firm, but it's not for me, the clash against Dundee United, a clash that most fans look forward to. They're normally great occasions, especially the New Year's Day clashes against them, normally a very good trip down to Dundee. What can we expect, Callum, do you think, from the Aberdeen team? Do you think we're going to kind of kick on from where we left off pre-internationals?
Well, I certainly hope so. Obviously, decent run of form if you discount the Motherwell game. But I will say it is the only game that matters this weekend. I can't recall any other bigger fixtures coming up at all. Can you, anyone?
No other games, I think, that need to be free to air or anything like that.
Nothing like that.
I think our game would be nice to be free to air.
I'd appreciate that. And actually, they've on Red TV, breaking news, Kevin McNaughton's going to be the co-commentary, and I cannot wait for that. I just hope he's got some MD 2020 to drink before it with Darren and Mackey. Cannot wait for that. But
Lisa, if you're listening though, me and Callum are still waiting up for our shout for our Red TV slot.
I know we'll get a chance. But no, seriously, I'm confident. Obviously, Dundee United looks decent originally when they sort of came up. It's been a bit shaky, especially in the Betfred Cup. I know you are waiting to mention that, Grant. Good result for the Blue Toon. Very happy about that. But I think we should be looking to put them away at Tannadice. I'm hoping, fingers crossed.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be an interesting game, isn't it, Glenn and Callum? I think obviously derby games, anything can happen. But I think the gross sadness is the fact that there's no fans on both sides at the game, obviously because of the global pandemic we're facing at the moment. That's got to be a big upset. But I'm really looking forward to the game. I think Aberdeen will want to kick on. They've been doing all right in the last couple of matches. The 4 wins in the last 5, Aberdeen. Dundee United just won in their last 5 themselves. And, as you've just mentioned, mixed Betfred Cup run. You know, they lost it against Peterhead. Superb result for the Blue Toon and Jim McAnally's men. But they weren't convincing in midweek. They just squeezed past Kelty Hearts 1-0. Yes, they thrashed Brecon at Glebe Park, but it all looks a little bit scrappy from Dundee United so far. It's still not quite clicking for Mickey Mellon's side. And you know, I look at this game and I think if Aberdeen play to their full potential, they should win the game. But you guys both know as well as I do that if Aberdeen don't play to their full potential, anything can happen. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I would be more confident than most that Aberdeen will get a positive result, Sam.
And this is why we got Stato Grant, and he's lived up to his name perfectly there with those stats for you guys tuning in. But I think, you know, you make a good point there, Grant, about, you know, we as fans, you know, we've seen how Aberdeen have performed, as Callum said, you know, except the Motherwell game. And there's kind of an expectation now we're just going to rock up, put in that level of performance, and we'll get the 3 points. But equally, Dundee United have looked impressive in spells, again, Callum touched on, but in the highlights I watched of the Livingston game in particular, it was just one-way traffic from Livy. And, you know, Shankland was kept very quiet. I think he only had, you know, 3 key touches in the final third. I can't remember if he even registered a shot on target. Obviously, you know, different game, different situation, but is it going to be key for an Aberdeen perspective to keep those key men? I think Chalmers as well has been a good signing for them. The likes of him and Shankland quiet. Will that be the key to Aberdeen's success? Or do we have to focus as United as a whole, not just on individuals?
I think they've definitely got a few star players, as you mentioned, those two. And then Bolton, who's coming on loan as well, he's looked pretty sharp in spells. They're no mugs, Dundee United, obviously. They've started off, as we said, sort of mixed spells. But in this sort of game especially, you never know. They could completely raise it. They could be right up for it, especially with a lot of ex-Aberdeen players, as we did mention in the last one, forgetting Nicky Clark. They could be up. They could be all out to prove a point. You never know.
I think it'll be an interesting game, fellas. I mean, Dundee United have only picked up 4 points at home so far this season, so that's certainly something that needs to take into consideration. But what I've watched Dundee United this season, Glenn, you mentioned the Livingston game, but that aside, in other games they've played, they've had lots of chances, especially against Hamilton, and they didn't take them. Really struggling to finish off games when they've been in winning positions. They've had games where they've battled hard but ended up losing, like the Celtic game. They were well beaten by Kilmarnock and by Rangers back to back. So there has been some real peaks and troughs with Dundee United, but the free kick Nicky Clark scored, it wasn't even a shot from open goals or open area of the pitch. It was from a dead ball. You know, that was the frustrating thing. That must be the biggest frustration for Mickey Mellon, the fact that his side could only manage one shot on target in the match, and it was from a free kick. You know, that's got to be a big disappointment. So they definitely needs more from his team, but he said, he quotes that this is a yardstick to strive for, and I couldn't agree more, but they certainly need to up their game if they're going to take anything off Aberdeen, it might be.
Yeah, that's some good points there. And as we're going to look on kind of from an Aberdeen point of view going into this game, obviously we don't know too much on Ferguson's injury, if he, like we've touched on, if he was rested. Hopefully he's fit. Matty Kennedy as well, obviously been out of the team recently. Would be good to see him back and slot back into his wing back role. But, you know, given the news today of St Mirren players testing positive for COVID, Hamilton, I think, have had a few this week as well. Obviously, Celtic's cases have been well documented through the week. It's encouraging, you know, we've almost served our time so far, to, you know, touch wood this season with the COVID cases. But other than the kind of ones we know about, we seem to be going into this weekend full strength of sorts. Is there any sort of changes you'd look to make, Callum? You know, obviously we've kind of tinkered a little bit with right wing back and Hedges being played there in last few games.
Yeah, I saw an interview with McKess saying there's a few of the guys that have been missing that are sort of back in training now, but I don't know if they'll be fit to start. So
obviously Cosgrove being one of them, sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay. Yeah, so I think we might see them back involved. I don't know whether we'll see them from the start. It wouldn't surprise me if we went again with sort of Hedges at the right wing back role. I wouldn't be disappointed with that either, to be honest. I think he's looked okay there. Obviously, there's a bit of imbalance with him always wanting to come in on his left. But, Super Tommy Hoban, contract extension and everything, he's actually looked pretty good as that sort of overlapping centre-back, which I didn't think he had in him. I won't lie, because I thought when he first came back, obviously he was just getting back from injury, I thought he did look a bit... He was obviously at Rolls-Royce, he always is, but I think he was just a bit off the pace, a bit sort of speed-wise, but he's looked good going forward, so maybe that is something that we might look at more often with Hedges right now at right wing back, but I wouldn't complain about it.
And for those of us that haven't tuned in previously, I hope you're all aware that me and Callum are taking full credit for the contract extension of Tommy Hoban as we made our direct plea to Mr. Cormack to get that done. So you can thank us all later. But Grant, we've touched on there with Callum about Hedges at right wing back. One player myself and Callum have discussed at length in previous shows, and Callum was so eager for him to break his duck. He did, and then Callum talked up about hopefully he continues, and he has. Marley Watkins scoring and being more involved, getting an assist as well in that last game. Do you think we can use him to continue our run of form? Do you think he'll still have a pivotal role? Obviously, like I've touched on there, Cosgrove back in training.
I certainly hope so, Glenn. I mean, I really like Watkins. I really liked him when he was at Inverness Cali Thistle. He made runs for players. He created chances. He scores goals. I think with a lot of these things, you need a little bit of confidence, and I think that's very much important for it to be a success. I think he'll be a big player. Cosgrove coming back is important. It'll be interesting to see whether McInnes changes strategy if Cosgrove plays. Will he go to more a direct approach? I certainly don't want us to go back to the old ways where we were just sort of going a little bit long ball and trying to get him looking for the knockdown. That just wouldn't quite work for me. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I've been very impressed with Watkins, especially in recent weeks. Let's hope his confidence is continued to rocket, I should say. And let's hope that he can net a goal on Saturday. That would be nice, wouldn't it?
It would be, and hopefully we can kind of kick on where we left off. So let's look at the obvious threats from Dundee United. Callum, where do you think they're most likely to cause us problems?
Peter Pawlett and only Peter Pawlett. He's the big life.
It's going to be really weird seeing him line up against us. I don't know how I feel about that.
I'm not going to like it at all. Obviously, they've got Lawrence Shankland, who's obviously a massive threat, but I'm genuinely most worried about Peter Pawlett just because it would be more painful, if anything, rather than actually more likely to happen. It would just hurt so much. But realistically, Chalmers, obviously, he's looked like a threat. We mentioned him before. Shankland is their main man. Obviously, he's just become a dad. You know about that, Glenn. Whether, I'm sure he'll be back involved. He missed the last Scotland game, and Bolton's looked sharp, as we mentioned before, but genuinely most worried about Peter Pawlett.
Yeah, I agree about Pawlett. I was having a look at the team, actually, that beat St Mirren, actually, and we've forgotten about this guy called Adrian Sporla, the Argentine. He got the second goal in that game. He looks quite impressive. He's kind of had fits and starts, but I really like him. I like Harkes as well in the centre of that midfield. But I think we grossly underestimate Nicky Clark as a striker. We've talked about Shankland, but I think Clark is Dundee United's top scorer this season. So, let's not underestimate how decent a player he is. But I think defensively, they've got a reasonably streetwise centre-back partnership. Mark Reynolds has got a lot of experience in there. That he will certainly help. I know Dundee United have conceded quite a lot of goals so far this season, but you'd like to think that he would help that defence. I also think Benjamin Siegrist's a very solid goalkeeper. So, he'll start quite a lot of attacks. I know he's very quick to get the ball out of his own box, a la Jamie Langfield style, I must admit.
But probably with more effect than Jamie Langfield.
Well, that's very true. But they've got a lot of youth in the team. I think they've got a lot of kind of youthfulness to them. A little bit of inexperience. Butcher's a very physical player in the middle of the pitch as well, like Sabukin as well. So there'll be a few meaty challenges, I think, from him, especially on Saturday. But it's going to be interesting because even in their win against Kelty Hearts every week, they played with a 5 at the back. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, Pera started. He's been kind of in and out of the team. I thought he might have played a little bit more this year. So it's going to be fascinating to see. But Pawlett is going to be really up for the game. Guarantee you that.
Well, hopefully not. Hopefully, he thinks about all the good times.
Hope he's not the scourge of us, but there you go.
Yeah. I think, though, you obviously mentioned Reynolds, it was ever reliable for us. I noticed he didn't actually start that St Mirren game. So it'll be interesting to see if he, forces his way back into the starting 11. Nicky Clark's obviously, you're right there to say, we've got to remember both strikers. We can't just focus on one. I do think Shankland will come with a point to prove. Obviously, it didn't work out the way he'd hoped at Aberdeen, so he'll probably want to prove a point to us. I know from speaking to the United guys in the 12th man chat, Nicky Clark has been a lot frustrating. He's missing probably chances he should score. I think we kind of had that ourselves with Marley Watkins initially. Obviously, he's now kind of got past that. Obviously, Nicky Clark did score in their last game, but hopefully he won't continue the run that Marley Watkins is. But I think for an Aberdeen point of view, if we can get at this United team, the sort of tempo that we've had in our last two games, a la Ross County away from home especially, get that early goal and just kill any confidence that United might have hoped to bring into the game, I think, we'd maybe set ourselves up nicely. You agree?
Yeah, definitely. I do notice we've gone very fancy today. We've had two Alas in this game. One from Grant, one from yourself. In this podcast, one from Grant, one from yourself. This has never happened before. This is unprecedented scenes.
This is what happens when you have high caliber guests on. It brings out the best in people.
I know. It brings out the Gordons in you, doesn't it, Glenn?
It does indeed.
But no, I think if we come flying out the traps, that's the ideal scenario. Kill Dundee United early on, and don't let them get in their strikes. I know I've seen in past many times, if we play and we start getting frustrated and start trying to force it and it just gets even worse, we can't let that happen. We've got to stay composed and hopefully we'll get the result.
Well, I think Dundee, Aberdeen have got to come out the traps flying. Yet to score a goal inside the first 50 minutes this season, Aberdeen. So that's got to be something to worry about, because Dundee United have already scored twice inside the first 15 in comparison. So that's going to be a fascinating part of the game to manage early on. I usually associate Aberdeen with being fast starters, but as I said, yet to score inside the first 50 minutes. But on the flip side of that, Aberdeen usually do well towards the end of the first half. They've scored 3 goals up towards half-time, whereas Dundee United have only scored 1, which is very important. But I think for Aberdeen, if they can get a confidence-boosting start, get an early goal, Dundee United's confidence might be already low anyway, could be rocked even further by going a goal down early on. And Aberdeen might be a wee bit more expressive, maybe have a go. But it'll be interesting to see what happens, because, as we know, Aberdeen are masters at winning matches 1-0. If they get an early goal, will they sit in, say to Dundee United, come and break us down and then try and hit on the break? That's what I think might happen. But then you look at the flip side, if Dundee United get off to a good start and get an early goal, as I've just mentioned, Aberdeen will have to come out and play, and that could make for an exciting game. Not for us, obviously, because we want to see Aberdeen win the game, but it's going to be interesting to see, certainly how the early stages of the game go on Saturday, because I get the feeling that if Aberdeen don't start the game well on Saturday, it could be a very, very interesting game, and not for the right reasons.
You make a good point, Grant, and it's something like the fast start you've obviously touched on there with no crowd as well. Do you think for a game like this, a game that normally had, I think in all fairness, it'd be fair to assume that this game would probably have headed for a sellout had fans been allowed in. And I think had it been a sellout, there would have been a lot of a high tempo to this game. So do you think McInnes will kind of take that stance like we did in Ross County? And hopefully Scott Wright's got his shooting boots on this week. I know Callum, you're going to appreciate that comment. But get some shots on target. He does like having a shot. He's been unlucky, obviously. But get in behind United, cause them problems. Because I do think if there had been a crowd, it would have probably been, as Grant says, role reversal. United would have come out at us from the start.
Well, yeah, I think it is important we come flying out the traps, hopefully, like we did against Ross County. But it's also important not to get too frustrated and try force it too much if it doesn't come immediately. As we showed, when we keep persisting at it and keep trying to play our game, we did eventually get the goal before half-time against Ross County. But it's a good point to make about Scott Wright. As I am Scott Wright's ugly little brother, as I've been affectionately called, I'm hoping he can sort of pick it up and get his shooting boots back on. He started the season pretty well. He missed a few clear-cut chances, let's be honest. So I'm hoping, praying, now would be a good time. to show up, Scotty. I'd be appreciative. I know you're listening, obviously.
I like Scott Wright. I think he offers a lot going forward. He's certainly involved in a lot of the chance creation, and really his XG is much higher than it should be. He should be scoring much more goals. I look back in the game, I think it was against Kilmarnock, wasn't it, where he was clean through and he slotted it past Rodgers, but also past the far post. But the Ross County game, he had a couple of chances as well, didn't he? And didn't take them. I think he's a little bit like Ryan Fraser in a way when he was at Aberdeen, getting into good areas but just not scoring enough goals. And that's my big worry with Scott Wright. But you never know, if he can get a couple of goals, maybe at the weekend, that might help his confidence. It's football's a strange game. Confidence is everything, and momentum is every bit as important. So we'll just have to see. But I like Scott Wright. I just want to see him get a goal, and hopefully this weekend he gets it.
Callum's delighted to hear that. I can see the smile on his face already.
I'm absolutely thrilled. A fellow Scott Wright lover. It's brilliant, but not like that.
And we'll reflect on one final point on this weekend's game. Mickey Mellon's come in as new manager into Dundee United. Had a strong start, it's fair to say, but against maybe Rangers, I think it's fair to say he was a bit naive in his tactics, got it wrong, and Rangers saw them off. Possibly the same happened against Hamilton, cruising in that game, I think it was fair to say, 1-0 up, and then Hamilton made a tactical change, and Mellon reacted straight away, made the change, and it didn't work. It backfired, obviously dropped points in that game as well. Do you think, obviously McInnes, it's rare for me and you, Callum, to speak up McInnes, and we did so obviously in the St Mirren game. Do you think McInnes's kind of tactical awareness, he's obviously shown it against the likes of Steven Gerrard when Gerrard first made it into Scottish football. Do you think McInnes can kind of play on that sort of naivety that Mellon's shown in a few games this season?
I certainly hope so. I think given Mickey Mellon's obviously, he's new. He's from Scotland obviously, but it's the first time he's managing in the league. It's sort of a relatively new team, still early days with Dundee United. I hope he can sort of make the most of that, and the fact that he still might not know his best 11, best tactical shape, etc. The way to best get the best out of his team is what I was trying to say. I hope McInnes can use his experience, and obviously he knows his team a lot better to his advantage, and make the most of that. And hopefully that might be the winning factor. You never know; it could come down to the managers and not the 11 men on the pitch. Well, could 22.
Be. Yes.
Quick maths. That's the hard law in me there.
Yeah. I was just somebody just nod and agree. So
the stature of the game is important as well. I mean, it's a newfound derby at the end of the day, and the importance of the fixture is everything. And McInnes has been managing in a load of these games already, and has been on the wrong side, but also on the winning side of plenty as well. This is Mellon's first newfound derby, and make no mistake about it, if Dundee United don't win at the weekend, there's going to be a little bit of pressure on them, because they've been in a bit of rut. Obviously, I mentioned in the Betfred Cup, but in the league, they've kind of gone off the boil in the league, as I've mentioned. Only one win in the last 5, one win in 6. So it's going to be an interesting game, and you can already hear the little bit of murmurings I'm hearing from United fans at my end about some of their recent performances, both in the cup and in the league. So we've got to look at it from that side of the coin. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how the teams shape up. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how Dundee United react from some of the games. We'll obviously be interested to see how they rotate from their Betfred Cup matches, because I don't think they'll start with some of the same team that played in those matches. But I think for Aberdeen, consistency is everything, and momentum is a good thing. So I would be very sceptical about changing things, especially when the momentum and progress is going well for the team at the moment.
Yeah, no, it's good point. And obviously, you asked us a question a few episodes back, Grant. Actually, it was the Hibs game. If Aberdeen lost, do you think we would be out of, the race for third? Obviously, Aberdeen answered your question emphatically that weekend.
And how? Now we look like a right numpty.
But it's something you obviously touched on there about Mellon being under pressure, depending on the result. But I also think if, United are obviously in 4th or 5th, I think it is just now. They're within, obviously, and that would be wrong. It would be 5th or 6th possibly. But the top 4 are kind of pulling away from the rest of the pack. So a win in this game for Aberdeen would obviously further extend the gap from the likes of Dundee United. So it's not just a pressure from there. It's also like you touched on in your question. It's a scoreboard pressure for the league.
Absolutely, a 10-point gap, and that's already such a big lead in the, just in the league table. I mean, the United, on the flip side, if they were to win the game, they'd claw it back to 4 points, and that would be a big swing in momentum for them. So it's a big game for both teams.
Yeah, and speaking of momentum, Callum, we've got a big month coming up. We play one of our games in hand on Tuesday night against Hamilton. We'll have a show previewing that game, released at the beginning of next week. And then our first of a Celtic doubleheader away at Parkhead, obviously, first of all, in league duty. How important do you feel getting off to a winning start is this week? Maybe also similar to how Steve Clarke in Scotland felt against the Israel game. Start off well in your first game and build towards those Celtic games coming up.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's vital to get, after an international break especially, to get the first win under the belts and then also to build on that against Hamilton, because we need to be going into the Celtic game high in confidence, Celtic games, if we've got any chance, let's be honest. So today, not today, I don't know what I'm on about today, this weekend's game, and I'm all over the shop, honestly. This weekend
today for those that are listening on
Saturday. Who knows? I hope someone knows better than I do. But it would be vital and start building the confidence again. Obviously, a couple good results in the league before the international break. It would be good to carry that on straight after it and come flying out the traps again. A couple good results.
Yeah, and we're going to just steal a bit of Grant's favourite part of his podcast, and it'd be rude not to with him on. Are you wanting to give a prediction on the game, Callum?
I will give a prediction, and I will not just say 1-0. I'm going to go push the boat out, and I'm going to go 2-0 to Aberdeen this time, and Scott Wright is going to score.
The winner?
We'll go the winner. Well, Scott Wright's going to score the winner.
And Grant, it'd be rude not to get your prediction as well.
Before I give you my prediction, guys, question for you. Who was the last Dons player to score the winner at Tannadice in the Monday night match?
Was it Scott
Vernon? I knew this was
Vernon?
a bad idea getting you on, Grant.
Was it Scott Vernon?
The game was March 2016.
You could be right then, Callum.
Simon Church.
Simon Church, really?
Simon Church.
Yeah.
And the last
it was
week,
a midweek game, I believe.
I think it was. The last, of course, meeting they played was in the Scottish Cup in 2018, which finished 4-2 at the Tawdry. So just a little bit of a factoid for you. I think Aberdeen will win the game. They've won 4 of the last 5 meetings between the United and themselves. Dundee United's only victory coming in 2015, a 1-0 home win at Tannadice. I think it'll be an interesting game. I think United will score. I think Aberdeen have got the quality to pick them off. So I'm going to go 2-1 Aberdeen.
That's stolen the prediction right out of my mouth, and I'm going to say Lord Tommy Hoban will score the winner.
Oh, sorry. Do I have to say who scores the winner?
No, you don't. I just Tommy Hoban hasn't had enough mentions on our show this week. So.
Well, who do you think will score the winner?
I'm going to go Ross McCrory.
Ross McCrory.
Good shout, solid shout.
Carry on his goal-scoring form from the international break. That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Well, we thank you all. We're drawing to a close on this episode. Grant, thanks very much for being the first official guest of a full show on Red Tinted Glasses. Where can our listeners and viewers tune into your own show, Campbell's Football?
Well, it's great to be on your show first and foremost, Glenn and Callum. Thanks very much for inviting me on to Red Tinted Glasses. I've really enjoyed our discussion. You can find Campbell's Footballs on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, wherever you listen to your shows. Got a new show on Friday, tomorrow, the 16th of October, with Laurie Dunsire from Hearts Television. We're building up to the 150th show, which happens to come out at the end of October. Do check it out. There's a few bad predictions, but lots of great crack. Very much lots to look forward to.
Hopefully we can make it to 150 shows ourselves. Obviously, there's a lot of enjoyable content on Grant's show. We hope you've enjoyed our content from myself, Callum and Grant. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you very much for listening. And don't forget to subscribe and like the video as well if you're watching the video version.
And make sure you share it amongst your friends.